My name is Tim from Drupal. We thought we would do a presentation on this equity crowdfunding portal that I've been working with David and Jade on for a couple of years. And I asked them to come along thinking that we don't often see clients at DrupalCorn talking about sort of their end of the deal. And this would be a chance for us to present together and talk a little bit about this project. So why don't you go ahead? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Just go ahead? Okay.
So hi, I'm Jade. I work with David. So you see the little Silicon Prairie symbol. David and Jade are at Silicon Prairie Portal and Exchange. So I'm going to give about a 5-minute on what we do, and then I'm going to hand it over to Tim to talk more about Drupal topics. So David, our founder at Silicon Prairie, is a national expert in software security, as well as a cutting-edge technology called distributed ledger technology. So that'll come in a little bit later, but we're mostly a financial technology company in a highly regulated field. I've been working full-time with David. If you're trying to get a hold of somebody for something and you can't get a hold of David, I'm kind of the right-hand woman over at Silicon Prairie. And then Tim has his own dev shop called Triplo, and he's been working on Silicon Prairie Portal and Exchange pretty much from the beginning, so we've got some pretty tight ties there. All right, so what is Silicon Prairie Portal and Exchange? We help businesses raise money. It essentially works like Kickstarter, but the campaign companies can sell real stock. It's kind of a more inclusive alternative financing option that lets small businesses raise money by selling a piece of their business like stock or getting a loan from a crowd of regular people, as well as it could be accredited certified rich people too. So if you've heard of the Jobs Act in 2012 or things like Minvest, those are pieces of law that say, okay, these small businesses can go online and publicly solicit for investment provided they go get an exemption from registration with the Securities Exchange Commission. So we are a platform that helps facilitate that. So what we say to our campaign companies, the people that are trying to raise funds, is if you don't have a bank or an angel investor to give you $100,000 for your project, that investment crowdfunding or equity crowdfunding is a way to put together 100 people at $1,000 each and get the same type of deal done. So they could be selling equity like Shark Tank. It could be debt like getting a loan from the bank, except you're getting a loan from 100 people. It could be a convertible loan. Any type of financial security can be sold in this format to the crowd. So one of the questions we get is, hey, is that even legal? Are you allowed to go on Facebook and try and sell stock? And it turns out you can, but it is a highly regulated thing. The Securities Exchange Commission pays a lot of attention to financial securities. That's all they do for a living. So we as a portal operator are regulated, and essentially there's a few different regulatory buckets. If the business is in one state and the investors are in one state, that might be something like an intrastate exemption. If the business is in one state and the investor is in a mix of other states, that could be this multi-state exemption. And then there is a national exemption under FINRA that allows the business to be in any state and the investors be mixed geographically from all the other 50 states. So one of the questions we ask our campaign companies is, how much money do you need to raise and where geographically are your investors located? And that does kind of play into the complexity of our portal because we have restrictions around who we're allowed to show what when. So that kind of plays into it. Anyhow, selling stock, very regulated, so we have to follow a lot of things, and then we actually have quite a few different business divisions to solve some of those problems. And we're actually a bit of a national front runner. So we have the investment crowdfunding portal. That's the piece that works like Kickstarter but is selling real stock. We also have a document automation system. If you're into the space where you've heard about smart contracts, we're a national front runner in that space because smart contracts require smart documents. We're also an SEC reporting stock transfer agent. Those are the people that are allowed to even move stock around. They keep the book of who owns what. And also, we're national experts in distributed ledger technology. That is the technology underneath cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. It is not synonymous with Bitcoin. All the investment crowdfunding is US dollars, US financial securities. We use blockchain on the back end to keep track of the shareholder registry. So David, our founder, will come up in a minute after I'm done kind of introducing things, but our credibility in that space is he wrote his own cryptocurrency, his own version of Bitcoin. It is a proof of stake coin that was traded created with a market cap of about $19 million, so that's pretty good for a thing that he created himself. He has about a dozen patents out of Wells Fargo for blockchain in banking, so yes, he can pass a background check so we can work in these regulated securities, and then is also teaching the graduate computer science course at our local private college up in Minneapolis. And then we're also a broker-dealer, and that allows us to solve some problems from a business perspective as well. So if it sounds like we've got a lot going on, it's because we do. Our software has to navigate this Candyland diagram. Essentially, we've got this top layer of people. We've gotten that kind of royal purple. That's our lawyers, our regulators, and our banks. The next swim lane down is blue. Those are the campaign companies, the people that are trying to raise funds. They're blue like they're crying because they need the money. We, as a software portal, are kind of the cookie cream in the middle there in vanilla, because we are between the campaign company and the investors in green that have the money. Overall, we're trying to get the money from the investor up to the campaign company, and we're trying to get the shares from the campaign company down to the investor. And in order to do this kind of complex multi-step thing, we have to pierce through a lot of different layers. So if we're starting left to right, if we kind of follow the arrows, initially a campaign company or someone who's trying to raise money by selling some shares of their business is going to onboard with us. That's where they start touching our smart document stack, where we're pulling in a securities attorney, and we do a little bit of document automation to help make the legal costs cheaper. Then we're going up back to that blue lane, making sure we have all the documents that are required and getting that to the right regulator up in that purple section. Then it drops back down to the portal level because we have to do some quality control steps to make sure that we're even allowed to go ahead and make this public. If we don't do that quality control step, the campaign company could get in trouble with the Securities Exchange Commission for publicly asking for investment without doing all the right things first. But provided they've passed that quality control step, then we move back up to the campaign company. It's on them to go ahead and advertise their deal. They're advertising the investment in their business. If you're a restaurant, it's not how delicious the soup is. It's when the business stops bleeding money and when you're going to have other locations. Okay, so they're marketing the investment. That hopefully has drawn the attention of the investor. This is the first time the investor has become aware of the campaign. Then they have to read all those legal documents that we helped prepare in the early part. They're signing a check or doing an electronic funds transfer. That goes back up to our software layer where we're doing a quality control step again to make sure that the campaign has met its minimum escrow requirements back into the blue. And if they have met all the agreements to get to that point, then we are able to say, okay, the investors now sign their subscription agreement. They're really taking possession of whatever stock had been offered, as well as we tell the bank in the purple level to go ahead and release the funds to the campaign company. So it's a very complex multi-step process that involves a lot of different business logic as well as technological issues and regulatory issues. So it allows us to do some interesting things. We are a front runner nationally of having this map of the ability to issue stock, move it over to a stock transfer agent, add cryptographic key pairs to a stock certificate, which creates a fresh token. So you can turn a stock certificate into something like a gift card where you can call and check and see if there's value on it. And then if someone did want to put that on the blockchain for peer-to-peer transfer, we would then go ahead and move it into that blue section where we're bootstrapping up a fresh chain, and those tokens can be dropped into that. So this is the kind of first and only roadmap of lawfully issued tokenized assets. So we have a lot going on. So our structure behind the scene actually involves a lot. We had a question earlier today. People were saying, why would you want to decouple your business logic? So this diagram is actually where I'm getting ready to hand over to Tim. We have a lot of different layers, like we were an enterprise level company, between where the user who wants to come and sell their stock or the investor user who wants to come buy some shares interfaces, and to get them all the way down into where I've got this blue arrow pointing to, that part of the map here is where our Drupal part sits. And we have a lot of different integrations. You can see the kind of gray boxes below that, so that when we do have to update, we have to think about the ripple effect of all our other integrations, as well as when we onboard new campaigns, they each get their own kind of copy or clone, a kind of white label site, and we have to think about Well, legally, these campaigns can be open for 12 months, and we have a bunch of those kind of duplicates on our core engine. Which ones will we swap over from 7 to 8? How are we going to handle it? So that is about the end of my information, and I'm going to go ahead and put Tim up.
So we wanted to start with a little bit of what the business case was, and what I'd actually like to do next is ask David to talk a little bit about, well, let me quickly say sort of how we met.
Yeah, for sure.
Which was David showed up at some Drupal happy hour, or like happy hours,
Yeah, happy hour, yeah.
a couple years ago, and like was working on a project and introducing himself to everybody. I had no idea really what he was working on at the time. I remember you talking about some of the cryptocurrency stuff you were involved in. And then about a year later or so, showed up and was looking for a contractor to work on a project, and he and I had some discussions, and then you got busy.
Right.
And then it was like 9 months later we ran into each other at bar camp, and you're like, I'm ready to go, Tim. And we sat down and started working, and I'd like him to talk a little bit about sort of like why he was interested in Drupal. And
For sure. So my first introduction to Drupal was, I think, Drupal 6. So I got involved in the cryptocurrency space. I was helping do some scalability fixes for what was the third largest Bitcoin mining pool on the planet. It had a front end. It was a Drupal 6 site, and so I was doing more of the back end side of things, doing some Python. But I got essentially administrative access to things. So I've been writing code for a long time, Apple II days, just to put a pin in that. So we're talking like 79, 80s, the first time I ever thumbed in my first line of code. I still code today. But I've spent a tour of industry. So I did my own startup. I ran an ISP, sold it off, did a tour of industry through banks and retail and energy equipment and insurance, etc. And so one of the things that I discovered along the way is that writing your own sort of login service is a loser move. And so there are literally, so I've actually got a white paper out. I will hand it out for free. It's called a simple login that walks you through all the attack vectors for if you want to roll your own, what the pitfalls are around creating essentially a simple login panel. So everything from registration, etc. So when I started building out the crowdfunding portal, having some familiarity with Drupal, doing a calibration against WordPress and Joomla and some of the other ones, I realized, okay, from a security standpoint, Drupal has it almost to the nines in terms of I like the architecture, the way it was laid out, the support, the community, just the sheer number of sites that were using Drupal 7 at the time made a lot of sense for us to use that. And so that's what we used as our core. And so working with Tim, I was sort of unlearned some bad practices. So even though you can't, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So content type, supported PHP. I was putting my PHP code right into the Drupal site directly.
in the body field.
In the body field, and that seemed to work just fine until Tim helped educate me about creating modules. And so we've gone through like several refactors on the site, and so I'm really quite impressed with the system. Some of the stuff we've done, because of the back end is all in Python, we had to develop our own tables inside, and so it's been sort of a bone of contention between the stuff that I've built out and the stuff that these guys have worked on, between doing it the Drupal way versus the way that that we need to do it to integrate with the banking side of things.
Right. Yes, I wasn't there right at the beginning because, as David was just saying, he actually started building this site. There was an existing Drupal site that he had sort of hacked together, and just very initially, this was before you had any other offerings, I think, on the site. I think you'd maybe started your own fundraise. Silicon Prairie started by raising money for themselves on the portal, and then when we went on and done a number of other raises for other companies. As you can see, there's quite a bit of technology going on in Silicon Prairie in total. David is very smart, does a lot of it himself. There might have been a peek at my slide earlier. One of the challenges of working in this kind of environment is working with a client who is a programmer, knows stuff that I don't know. What he did mention too is that, I don't think you mentioned, that David has a background in running an ISP. And so, for example, he's hosting his own site, and I don't have a lot of experience with hosting, so my client is actually the host of the site that we're building. And which in some ways would be like a service provider.
And some of the things, the reason because we do have the banking integration piece of it, and because I did run an ISP, building infrastructure is sort of a no-brainer for me. And one of the things I've done to control our costs is that, you hear these horror stories from people getting these bills from Amazon, that are outside of what they had budgeted. And so I built our stack based on rack mount computers in co-location data centers paying fixed fees that can then allow us to control our costs. But then we also then have there's a double-edged sword essentially. If we break it, we own it. And so we've had some challenges with some of our hosting providers, and so now we're moved into a data center that's right by our office actually. And so now we can actually control our costs and essentially have as much scalability as we need.
Sure. There's a screenshot. We can go in and look actually at the site in a little bit. That's the front page of Silicon Prairie. We talked a little, these were slides so that we've been covered already. Some of the issues that so the whole thought behind this talk was to talk a little bit about this kind of a case study and just talk about a few of the challenges that and what sort of modules for the Drupal content part, what some of the choices that we've made. And I'm totally open, and hopeful that if anybody has ideas on how we could do things differently, they let us know. Although we're not going to get too deep into things. But a couple of the big issues we've been dealing with are David has written code that is independent of Drupal that we're interacting with, that Drupal is kind of a front end for. Clients, the sort of the rough process for an individual that say wants to invest in one of these startups is they come to the site, they can find the issue, peruse the details, and decide that they want to pledge to invest. These campaigns are like Kickstarters in that there's usually a minimum amount that has to be reached before the deal actually goes through. But once I pledge, I'm supposed to fund my offer. I actually have to put money into an escrow account that's there, and when the minimum is reached, that money is transferred then to the issuer. The code handling all of that banking stuff is code that David has written. We're kind of providing a front end for that, so we manage the pledge process. All of the banking stuff is sort of outside of Drupal itself. But we have to interact with it. We're also interacting with other third-party providers. We're still working with Alto IRA, right? So, for example, people are able to invest through an IRA. You can set up a special IRA that will a self-managed sort of IRA that will allow you to invest in this kind of an investment. And I think there's very few IRAs that would let you do that, and we have a relationship with one, and we try to facilitate and integrate with that so that you can, click on a button to fund your pledge with your IRA, and then, we pass the user off to Alto IRA where they set up their account, and then they get passed back. So we've had to create those kinds of integrations. We haven't heavily integrated it yet, but there's an insurance company that provides insurance, and we're going to be probably in the future have to build up some further interaction with that. One of the big challenges for the site is, I'm going to just go back to the screenshot. We have a portal where most of the issues are listed, so you can come and sort of any of the active issues. I'll show the actual screen. If you scroll down there, you'll see some closed issues. Those 3 issues are all active right now on the site. But if you're an investor, or if you're an issuer raising money and advertising to your crowd to come and invest in your company, you don't necessarily want to send them to a portal with a bunch of other investment opportunities. You'd rather send them to something specific.
Yeah, just a little quick note. So we've actually helped form capital for a number of breweries. And so breweries have a natural need for capital because that stainless steel is expensive. They have a natural crowd built in of people that are in those neighborhoods where they're going to build those breweries or brew pubs. And so then they have a natural crowd. And so and since we're potentially hosting several breweries at the same time, you don't want to necessarily send all your traffic to our main portal. And so one of our design constraints was that we wanted to offer essentially a private walled garden experience, so that you would then send them into a version of our portal where they'd literally just only see that particular offering. Right. And so this is one of the early design constraints when we started talking about building things out was, well, do we use multi-site for instance, to do this? Well, we wanted to create essentially something similar to a single sign-on experience. So if someone comes and makes an investment in one of our portals, they would be allowed to get access to any of the other portals per se, or sub-portals, if you will. And so we went back and forth on that, and then came across an alternative.
Right. We landed on domain access as our choice because we're able to have multiple domains, subdomains or domains using the same database, the same code base. We want to share users between these subdomains. We want to share content, and domain access works really well with that. We can look at that in a minute, but yeah, so that was one of our technological one of the big things we dealt with. Stability. In the past, my experience with Drupal has mostly been working on nonprofit sites where it's kind of we design, we build, and then the site is, it manages some content. There's not a lot of active ongoing development. It's been hard to convince clients of the need to do things like automated testing. This was a case where we're doing active development on an active site on an ongoing basis, and so we had to look at things like Triplo sort of as a small shop, had to look at testing sort of for the first time, and we had a client that appreciated the need for it and the budget for it.
Yeah, so it's one of the things we did is we actually shut down for a month in terms of all new feature developments so that these guys could develop an automated testing suite, which really paid dividends going forward. So now we have the ability to run an automated test suite before we deploy something to production to make sure we didn't break something, which is something that for a tiny little company like ours is, when we talk to even enterprise clients, are like, we don't even do that necessarily. And so it's been really kind of a real boon for us.
Right. Part of the piece to make sure that why we have the budget is we're handling large dollar amounts. We've done about 12 deals, and it's been about $5 million worth of projects. We've got another $17 million in the pipeline, so that stability is critical.
So Behat is primarily the testing that we're doing so far. I think we have a need to maybe do some additional testing that may not. We may want to expand that in the future, but for now it's doing most of the testing that we do. For those who aren't familiar with Behat, it allows you to write some pretty English language tests. I mean, you can literally sort of write, given I'm on the home page, I should see Silicon Prairie, I should see. And this just allows us to test for do a lot of basic things, make sure pages are working, links are working. I haven't yet acknowledged David Radcliffe in the room, who has done a lot of work on this site. Including Behat works really good for sort of existing content and things like that. But when we started running into challenges like, okay, we want somebody to create a node, we wanted to test a node that doesn't already exist, and we had to, David had to write some custom PHP that would actually create content types for us to do the testing on, or a script. So we run a script now when we do our testing. And this is all fairly basic in terms of the possibilities for using this kind of testing. You can see up at the top, we publish a couple of nodes. Right now, we have, I just recently ran into the situation where the devel module was we don't enable the devel module on production, but I ran into a bug because the devel module wasn't enabled on production. And basically, I had some debug code that got through, and the debug code conflicted with devel and caused a problem. But the fact that devel wasn't there caused a problem. And so now we're just turning off that module and test before we run it. We'd love ideas on how to handle that. So we disable some modules, we create some nodes. I don't know if we created users here. I think through the tests we create some users. But those are the kinds of things we do with Behat. So it's all fairly basic if you've done testing before, but just thought I would sort of show some of what we've been doing. I'll go ahead and just mention on domain access that we talked about already. This is the kind of thing we're doing. So one of the things that I've enjoyed working with David is that he is very much a release early and release often, and like we're just getting out there, we're showing what we can do. I think as a business, it's fair to say that Silicon Prairie is like evolving a lot very rapidly, and so in some stages we're testing a lot of things out. our design could be a little bit better. It's pretty clean and simple.
I like to say, I mean, it is, essentially, you get what you get with D7, you don't throw a fit. And so we like to tell people that it's essentially Craigslist plus. We have built a war machine underneath the hood, thanks in part to Drupal.
We are in the process of retheming the site with a much better design. But for now, this is what a white label site, it's pretty white. It just, label looks like, so this would be a custom domain. This is another one. We have actually been creating, again, for the Drupalers, we use the Zen as for Drupal, we're still in Drupal 7, we use Zen as our parent theme, and I've just created sub-themes for each one of these subdomains. I don't think that's the most efficient way to have done this in the future. I think we could make use of some other tools so we didn't have to, but we've had a small enough number of sub-themes, and I've sort of automated figured out the process enough that I can create a sub-theme for a new domain fairly quickly. But ideally, we'd like to automate this and come up with better ways of handling that. If anybody's not familiar with domain access, these are the kinds of things it provides you with. We have a whole list of the various subdomains that we use. You can pick which theme you want to use for each subdomain. When you're making content, you have the ability to assign that content to whichever domains you want. So we can say that this content should only show up on the main portal, or it should sign up on and like the white label site, or there might be cases where we're showing it on multiple. One of the other tools we've used in conjunction with domain access is the groups module. We're still building up some of our sort of issuer features, but we'd like for issuers to be able to have some control over the content on their white label site. And the groups module, gives you the ability to assign content to a specific group. We assign a group to a specific issue, and we can have members and editors for each group. So Drupal allows us to give really detailed permissions. So we have a very small audience today. Partly we've kept this formal because it is being recorded. But I think those were a couple of the big design decisions we made. I'd like to maybe now I can call up sort of the live site. We can take a sneak peek at our new design. But I would entertain just maybe even turning off the recording and just having a bit of a discussion if anybody's interested or has any questions. Is there anything else we would want to get in the recording before we?
Well, sometimes when you take questions from the audience, as long as you repeat the question, that the recording can make use of it.
Well, we can leave it on too. Let me, that was just the member page in groups, sort of show you can add, invite users. But anyways, that's all the slides I have. I'm gonna switch back. Here's a sneak peek at our, I think you're okay with sharing that, aren't you, David? Interesting thing, David is engaging with a former possible client who's now a strategic partner who's working with Silicon Prairie who has some design skills. I don't think he's a full-time designer.
Yeah, he's an artist.
But he was able to, he basically prototyped a new design for us using Wix, which I have never worked with before. So basically we have a Wix site that we're just using as our mock-up to build the new site. And
it worked out much better than using just say some kind of wireframe tool.
And this could be ready in more weeks, at the most a month. Well, certainly by the end of the year, we hope to have the whole new front theme and appearance for.
I'm pleased to report that at this very moment, we've never been closer to upgrading our UX UI.
We don't need to look at that or that. So go ahead. Does anybody have anything?
So, a couple questions. So, are these like multi-sites or?
No.
Okay, maybe tell me a little bit more about domain access. I'm not familiar with that module.
We were talking about that at lunch. The difference. Multi-site, you actually have a database for each of your multi-sites,
Right.
And technically, user accounts are specific to each of the individual sites. The content is specific. I mean, there would be ways of sharing that content, But we wanted users, as David describes it, we wanted a single sign-on, right? We wanted the user to be able to use the same account, regardless of whether they were logging into the main portal. And domain access just uses one database, one code base. It just allows you to assign data and assign users to different domains. And all those domains are pointed at the same website. So it's not like multi-site in that sense.
And we just by choice, we just have everything hang off of our domain. So it's like whatever every issue is .sppx.io, because we have a a wildcard cert to cover that. But domain access can support any other domain. And if you've got essentially the support in place to handle it, you could either put in a proxy server in front with SSL termination and then have it talk to the Drupal backend. But for us, it was important to be able to not only offer that single sign-on experience, but then have a unified investment dashboard. Some of the regulations that we operate under, we have to look at across all their investment activity for a given calendar year, and so it would be really hard to do that with a multi-site, unless we had some sort of database replication thing in the background, kind of keeping things in sync.
I'd like to add on too, from a business perspective, the ability for somebody to come to the overall portal and look at one campaign and then look at another one has been something that's been a differentiator for us. Some of our earlier competitors, essentially when they wanted to bring a new campaign alive, would take them like 25 hours to update. And then if someone did invest at that brewery and they later on wanted to go invest in an apartment complex or a tech company, they would have to go create a whole nother account. And it was incredibly frustrating for the investor user for that. It just didn't meet their expectations of my ability to go to a website and have one sign-on.
So something that was certainly new to me in working with Silicon Prairie is that this is a financial tech company that's highly regulated. And I think Jade was just alluding to this, but a really specific example of the kinds of things we've run into, right, is that these various different offerings are each offered under different exemptions, either state or federal, each of which have their own rules. And like the kind of thing we were running into very early on was, so when you're a logged in user has the ability to see all of these details about an issue, right? And this, I think this is all it's public.
Yeah.
None of that is, because I am logged in as, it occurred to me, I'm logged in as an admin. I hope
No, that's fine.
So this is for educational purposes only in any case.
Right, but for, and I don't know if this has changed at all, but from Invest at the beginning, it was certainly our understanding of the law that we couldn't show any of this
Correct.
data unless you were logged into the site.
That's absolutely true in places like Colorado. We're not sure in Iowa how they feel about it, but sometimes they want to have the information, require an authenticated user in order to see it.
Right.
Some jurisdictions require it, some jurisdictions don't. Some exemptions require it, some exemptions don't. And
Well, and my point was even further, the federal exemption required that we show
You must
this
show the
information.
You must show them.
So if we were doing a federal issue, it was mandated that all of this information be visible to unauthenticated users.
including things like discussion boards. You couldn't post without creating an account, but they had to be publicly displayed.
Yes, and like I don't think the state required a discussion board, but the feds did require, for federal issues, they did require. So these are the kinds of challenges that we've been dealing with.
And there's different regulatory rules for a state type law versus a national type law. And maybe people would have this assumption that those all should line up. Well, these are relatively new laws. There hasn't been a chance for the Securities Exchange Commission to perform a harmonization of all the state's laws. That's in process now, but that doesn't solve our problems as a tech company. We must comply with everything. And so the ability to have some software that could be, able to handle that, which, okay, if you're in this situation and it's this information and this law, we've got that overlapping Venn diagram of yes, we can thread the needle and just do a bullseye of that information to the right person and have demonstrated compliance.
And then just say, Tim, go build it.
And we thank him.
David did a lot of our custom code on this too as well. So, any other questions? You said you maybe had others?
Yeah, so like if I click on Invest Now,
What will happen?
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to go through that right now. First of all, I mean, these are the kinds of things we're dealing with. Again, I think it depends on which exemption you're investing in. You have to certify yourself, so you have to answer some questions and say, I meet these thresholds in order to invest. And once you're certified, then you don't have to do that on future issues. So we have a certification process. The first thing, if you've already certified and you invest now, it'll take you directly to the invest page. If you're not certified, it'll ask you some questions and have you verify those things.
And I'm trying to, are we still using login toboggan for some of that?
Not for this.
Okay.
We are using it, but for other things.
Got it.
Once you log in, you pledge. So as an investor, you say, yes, I'm interested in this, I pledge to invest, and there's a minimum investment for each issue that varies. I pledge to invest $1,000. And we've done issues. Silicon Prairie its minimum was as low as $100, I think, for an investor.
For the individual investor.
For an individual investor, I think most companies seem to do 1,000 to 5,000,
Yeah.
and we've had some bigger ones. Minimum investments.
I can drill back out to make sure it's clear. So if somebody's never come to the website before, but they're coming because they want to invest in this, they have to create an account, they have to plumb up their banking information so that the funds can go from their bank to the portal to an escrow account created on behalf of the campaign. So that's part of why we like Drupal, is the security of being able to pierce through those layers. So we have some constraints from the banking side. The banking software security best practices have to be maintained. So there's something called a penny test. We have to prove that the person who's put in this bank account owns that bank account. So if somebody comes to the portal, wants to be an investor, they have to create an account, they have to plumb up their bank account, prove they own that bank account by performing the penny test. Then we can go ahead and let them pledge. And this is a banking specific thing, but pledging is separated from, they pledge, yes, I promise to get into this for a certain dollar amount. Then they are legally supposed to be reading about the investment and understanding it. So there's a separate step where, okay, we've got all these legal documents, they should really understand what they're buying, and then the actual funding of the transaction happens. That's where we're actually moving funds from a bank account to the escrow account for the campaign. And then once that campaign has hit a minimum, again, a regulatory requirement that the campaign company has set early on during their homework, we are allowed to go ahead and start getting the subscription agreements from the person who's invested. It says, yes, I really do want to buy this. They're really signing off and taking possession of whatever they've purchased. And so that's a very controlled legal process where all along the way there's check boxes and yes, I accept that this is risky. Yes, I'm initially here, and we're gathering all the legal documents to issue that financial security. But that completes the cycle once the investor has really signed their subscription agreement.
Does that answer your question? Do you have another one? Anything else?
What's the business model you use? Or do you charge the companies like a flat fee, or do you take a points on the deal?
So that actually, can I take that one too? Okay, so actually the way we are allowed to charge a fee as a software service provider is actually controlled by the law that the exemption is working under. So we're not a broker dealer, we're not an accountant, we're not a lawyer.
We are a broker dealer, but in Minnesota only.
Yeah, but generally speaking, we're an investment crowdfunding portal, and that has its own kind of rights and responsibilities as an entity. So
The short answer is we charge fixed fees to onboard them, so that covers the cost of the bank account and spinning up the white label site. And then depending on which exemption or rule you're using to raise funds under, we can either charge another fixed fee, or we can come along for the ride and charge a percentage of the raise.
success fee of the raise once they have the money to pay.
And and that would just be a cash. You're not taking like equity.
We can, and actually we will do a couple of other things. And so we either can do a cash and equity piece of it. We typically don't do anything exotic like having warrants or rights or whatever. We'll just reinvest that money back in the campaign simply while it's going on.
So it's kind of like cash, but then we may take some of our fees and also become the first investor in the campaign. But it's not warrants. We're coming in with the crowd.
Hopefully you get your 2 beers a day.
Well, I don't mean to brag, but I own about 2% of a Minnesota brewery. I'm pretty excited. Like when I walk in, it's like I'm kind of a big deal.
Do you see a lot of people that actually invest in more than one of the businesses on your platform?
Yeah, actually we have seen some cross investment. We don't promise that to our campaign companies. I feel like it's a little disingenuous. There's a lot of websites that'll promise to put you in front of the whales and it's going to rain down money. What we have is a process that people follow, but we have seen some significant cross investment. We have almost 2,000 investors,
right.
A mix of regular people and certified rich accredited investors.
In fact, one of the things that's really interesting, once we got that integration with the outside custodian for the IRA funds, so the self-directed IRAs, which used to be pretty expensive to set up, a couple $1,000s, and then, hundreds of dollars a year for compliance. This company, little fintech company, the principal's based in Tennessee, the company's in New York, they'll do them for $50. They'll set up that self-directed IRA, help you roll money over from your Vanguard or your Fidelity or, American Trust. 401k, and then it's connected directly to our portal as a funding source. And so we've seen much larger flows of capital. So people might, I'd love to invest $10,000 in your brewery, but I don't really have the liquid cash. But wait a minute, I can go tap this 401k from the 3 years I worked at Target and flow that money in there, without
tax advantage.
Yeah, tax advantage. There's no
Without
penalty for using it.
From your 401k to roll over.
So when we first lit that up in December, we saw for a real estate project where some of the investors said, well, I'll put $10,000 or $25,000 in. Well, once we had the IRA in place, they were like $50,000, $100,000 into real estate because it's a very simple business model with really good math.
You could have potentially 51 rules, right? So federal and then all the states, and then
At a minimum.
It just sounds hard.
It's very complex. Thank you.
Thank you for
I feel like
noticing.
he
Yes,
gets
he does get it.
Come
No,
on.
yes. Yeah, and imagine trying to do something like this with WordPress, right? I mean, you'd be like writing a ton of code, but Drupal really does a lot of the heavy lifting for us, and it's been really pretty awesome. And so as we're thinking about rolling forward, and really appreciate hearing the thoughts on the whole D7, D8, D9 conversation. Some of the things that we're going to do is, because these campaigns are sort of long-lived, we'll probably
Up to a year
yeah,
long.
up to a year long. You can raise money up to a year. We'll probably be intentional and probably stop putting issues on our D7 platform in November of next year. That gives us a full year for that thing to run out. We might tinker with the main site and just make it sort of a static content that sends people to one portal or the other. But the intent is that as of December of next year, that first issue in December would be on something like a D8 or D9 platform. But we have a lot of work to do before then because we're using a ton of modules and we haven't calibrated yet to know what's available in D8 or not, and whether it's even necessary.
Take some inventory like that.
Yeah, we need to do an inventory, and then we may end up taking a lot, because there's a lot of if then, the else sort of things inside the system. We may decouple that from Drupal and put that on sort of a back-end sort of rules engine, and then just use a message bus to see if what's going on inside of the user interface is compliant or not. But yeah, we're open to suggestions.
I had the modules page open because over the last 2 years, we've enabled and then disabled a lot of modules, some of which haven't been removed. They're just sitting there. And the D8 move will give us the chance to clean all that up and streamline things.
What's your IDE of choice?
What do you use?
I use PHP Storm.
Okay, well then, there's a lot of hints, especially if you set it up as a Drupal project, that it'll start telling you, like, hey, this is deprecated, or it's going to be deprecated.
Oh, that's awesome.
And some of that's already in the code base too, where they're like letting you know that maybe this method or function is not going to be available in the future, so you can start,
We're getting some feedback.
Yeah.
Let's just let's go ahead and turn this off.
Yeah, we're at the last little.
I don't know if this is what's doing it or if it's something else.
Yeah, this is the mic right here. I think
Yeah, I think
I've
this
killed
might be a
it from
speaker.
here, and I know there's a speaker in the LCD, but this is muted. Mute.
Well, I think that literally we have time for one more question.
A couple more
Otherwise,
questions,
then
yeah.
that'll get us right on time, and we'll respect your
Oh,
time.
that's not good.
I'm not really a power coder. In the past, David done a lot of our hard coding, so that's why I could be using PHP Storm much more effectively than I.
Well, yeah, I guess that'd be my suggestion, is find out a little bit more what it can do for you.
For sure.
It could give you some of the hints about,
Yeah.
What's the
here's
name
some
of that
stuff
again?
It's an editor,
Sure.
PHP Storm.
PHP Storm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, that's great.
It's helpful for me because I've had to start rewriting stuff.
Oh, okay.
We're all in the same trench on that,
Yeah.
right?
So, and that's okay, that's just progress.
Right, it's just progress, right? Yeah, and just honestly, it's just sort of thinking about the things that we would do. Like we would probably literally just, take the advice, and we would literally just spin up the new theme and the new site sort of separately.
Parallel from
And
it.
then because most of the bulk of the heavy lifting is in our own tables, sort of outside of Drupal, it's a no-brainer to lift and load that. What we'd really care about is the user table for the most part, and then there's really would be no need for us to even migrate most of our content over into D8, and so I'm actually now a little more cautiously optimistic about potentially the path to do that.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
the migration API makes that, you gotta learn some code.
Yeah.
Learn how to do it, but it's cool. Like,
Yeah.
It takes from one content type, and puts it in another content type. You
That's
write the
sweet.
code, you run a Drush command, and then you sit back and get coffee. And then
Nice.
sit back and
Okay.
port it over.
And you've got his phone number when it breaks.
Maybe a business card real quick.
Yeah, make sure you get your business card.
I have a few friends who've done this before, so, but this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing.
I've done it once, and it's been a little while, but it is powerful, extremely powerful.
I haven't actually done that migration yet, but
Yeah, you should just play around with it.
but I've been
Try
to
to do one content type, see what happens.
Oh, just, yeah, see how it goes, yeah.
I've been to a few sessions on it and know people who do it. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's our time, guys. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, I really
Great
appreciate it for
questions.
sticking with us, really, yeah. This is the quality crowd here.